Hey guys, welcome back to Fat Man Little Trail, the podcast. We have a very special edition today. My first interview on the podcast, and joining me is meteorologist Matt Makens. Matt has been a mainstay at Denver television over the last decade as a meteorologist and the ABC station, the CW stations, and now he's branching out on his own with his own project. Matt is all sorts of certified meteorologist, and I'm really excited to have him join me today. Matt, thank you so much.
Well, thanks for having me. Welcome to the dungeon. The dungeon we called the remote TV studio since COVID started. It kind of looked like a TV studio, but don't let the children artwork behind me fool you. It's pretty cheap setup down here.
Oh, it looks wonderful. It looks wonderful. Um, Got to start out just wondering about this new project. Tell me a little bit about it. It's called Macons Weather, right? Tell me about that.
That's right. For a number of years, I kind of had kind of an inkling or a sense that I needed kind of something on the side. That TV local news is not necessarily sustainable, especially for a guy in his 40s. I'm not much of an entertainer. I'm just a data guy. So for a number of years, I've been kicking around. What if I started my own radio network? Or what if I went into industries that need long-term forecasts or even short-term forecasts? Or what if I approached event planners that may, like downtown Denver has huge events all the time. What if they need just a weather source? And so all these years of thinking about and knowing all these industries that need weather coverage, TV contracts usually prevent that. And coming into the winter and the spring of 2021, just with the world of COVID and seeing how much of my kids' lives I was missing out on by being at work every night on TV and not getting home till 12:30 in the morning, I thought, this is my chance. This is my chance to go out and reach these industries that need weather help. I've been a communicator for 20 years. I do well on social media. And those are things in the weather and the technical, the scientific community that there's a need for. So I'm trying to fill those needs, whether it be crisis communications, largely weather communications, and then also largely how we're reacting to climate and seasonal variability with long-term weather forecasts. So kind of all the dreams that I've had cooking here in the back burner, that's what I'm working on now.
And you grew up in Colorado, correct? Like, weren't you a local person? So you're uniquely set to forecast here in the state.
Right. So I live in Castle Rock now and born and raised in Castle Rock. So when I left in 98, I never thought that Castle Rock would be on the map for me again. And then my wife and I moved back to the city in 2010. And then 2013, we decided the city wasn't for us. It was a little too busy. So we came down to Castle Rock and she found a house and I didn't push it. Trust me, I didn't push it. But she said, this is the house for us. So I'm back at home and yeah, born and raised. So Castle Rock has changed a tremendous amount since I was little, but it still feels like home, good comfort, and very happy to raise my own kiddos. I have two. I'm so very happy to raise them here where I grew up. And a lot of like high school buddies and even some elementary and preschool buddies are still around. So a pretty good tight-knit community here, and I'm glad to be back.
So being a Colorado native, you have to be pretty experienced in the outdoors. Are you a hiker, a hunter, a fisher, a camper? What do you like to do?
Everything has changed over the years for me. I grew up on a small farm, small ranch, so livestock and agriculture was huge for my upbringing. And throughout that, my dad, my mom would they'd take me fishing a lot. So growing up, I would kind of identify with, the ag community, but recreationally, I loved to fish. So angling, would go to up by Deckers, go along the Platte, go into Waterton Canyon. They were close to home, so pretty easy to fish there. And we do some longer trips, but fishing was certainly the first thing. And then once I got into high school, some lifelong buddies, we were old enough we could drive and we could plan our own trips in the summer. We started doing a lot of backpacking, a lot throughout the collegiate peaks, some out by the Grand Mesa. So from fishing into backpacking, and now with my kiddos, they're not quite old enough to backpack with, and they certainly don't have dad's patience to fish. They got their mom's impatience. So we're hikers. We love to hike, and we've hit a ton of trails so far this year. I don't know what our mileage is on the All Trails app, but we're racking up quite a few miles so far this year.
Well, that's perfect because I do a hiking podcast and website. So you're the perfect person to talk about weather on the hiking trail and what to look for and what to avoid to make sure that you don't get yourself into trouble. Because I think that's one of the riskiest things that's out there, along with bears and snakes and things like that. But the weather can really come up on you quick. So I did want to talk to you about that today. Especially lately in Colorado, we have, I believe it's a monsoon type cycle. When I'm planning out a hike, let's say I'm going to hike on a Saturday, and how far away should I start looking at that weather forecast? And are there like better or worse places to go to find a good forecast for me?
Uh, a lot there. So let's break it down from the forecasting standpoint first, and then the threat level this time of year second. Um, so I am biased because I've contributed to a blog site called weather5280.com. I've contributed there for a number of years, and I'm contributing more and more now that I'm out of television. That site has a number of resources. Whether or not you are a subscriber, you don't have to be, but we try to break down those kind of planning activities more so than what you would find on television forecasts or radio forecasts. So it's an option to give you it's more of what I kind of anecdotally call the heads up weather site. We're not going to give you daily forecasts 95 and sunny. We're going to give you more of a heads up of, hey, watch out for this weekend. So in an example of this week, already giving you a heads up of next weekend and the few days that follow, because the monsoon will have an uptick in the moisture. So going to kind of the second part of this time of the year is the secondary wet season that Colorado has. The first kind of ramps up and goes through late winter, and we get the snowpack up, and then we have thunderstorms through about early June or so. And then we see the rain chances decrease late June into early July. Then late July into August, we see a secondary peak in rain chances or rainfall. And that secondary peak is known as, we call it the North American monsoon. Anybody that's been in Southeast Asia, this is not a monsoon, what we have here. But what it is you get the atmosphere to become kind of stagnant, and it creates a weather pattern that draws in a lot of water from the Gulf of Mexico, and it's sometimes the Pacific Ocean. And it's stagnant in that once it establishes itself, it just likes to stay there for about 6 weeks before it breaks down and we transition into fall. So you look for the weather pattern to kind of build into where we are now. And that weather pattern grabs tropical moisture and moves it into the desert Southwest, into the Four Corners, and at times the Central and Northern Rockies. And now the last 5 years, the monsoon, quote unquote monsoon, has not really been of a rainfall benefit for Colorado or really the Western US. It's kind of fizzled. And this year we've seen some flash flood videos, say from Arizona, Western Colorado near Grand Junction, some flash flooding. Glenwood Canyon has barely been open, because of rock falls and the burn scars and flash flooding. So this time of the year, it's that tropical flow of moisture that gives us a lot more potential for rainfall and very heavy rain. So look at July into early and mid-August, and then it tapers off into September. So the monsoon is kind of a season, if you will. It's a seasonal weather pattern, if you will, and it draws in moisture for us.
So that's a seasonal. If I'm looking at a short-term forecast, like I want to hike 3 days from now, I want to hike 5 days, 7 days, where is the most accuracy in that? Where can I feel comfortable with that forecast?
We can notice the atmosphere trying to bring in more humidity, more moisture to turn into rain. And in this time of the year, you can kind of start to see that 7 to 14 days in advance, just knowing that somewhere in this region, we're going to see an increase in humidity. To accurately plan a hike or a camping trip, something like that, you really got to be, you can kind of get a good sense 3 to 5 days in advance. But honestly, the location of the heaviest rainfall, probably within that 1 to 3 day window. And certainly during the monsoon, you have got to know your forecast the morning of, because the monsoon, as it brings in that moisture, it's not like it's just bringing it in the afternoon and evening. It's bringing it in for a full day or a series of days. So you may have a lightning or a flash flood risk in the morning, the midday, early afternoon, versus kind of what's ingrained in our minds to watch out for, be off the hills in the late afternoon. That doesn't work in the monsoon season because you can be trapped even early in the day. So bottom line, day of to 1 to 3 days, you can get a very good sense of the weather. And then more on a heads up basis, 3 to 10 to 14 days in advance.
All right. So I figured out my forecast. I'm a day or two out and I figured out my forecast. What are you, as a meteorologist? We're still in the planning stage. What are you packing to make sure that you're covered for any types of weather that's coming up? Obviously, you're going to adjust it a little bit, but what's your go-to, this is going to keep me safe gear that you're going to pack with you?
All first of mine, the first thing that pops in is the backup clothes. It's a lot of extra weight, but backup footwear, backup socks, backup pants, backup shirt. The second you get wet, you know how cold the rain shower in Colorado can become, especially if you're 8,000 feet or higher. And certainly if you're 10,000 feet or higher, you're going to get cold really quickly. So the dry backup clothes, I think, is absolutely the first thing. Second to that would be the necessary supplies, more water than you're used to carrying, more food than you're used to carrying, or at least, protein bars, those kind of things. Because even if let's just give you an example, you're hiking, you have your backup dry clothes, you see the rain shower approaching, it's early to mid-morning, you're caught a little off guard, you find a dry spot to just hang out. Those rain showers may last several hours. Your lunch in the car is going to do you no good. And you may be there, trying to find shelter for a number of hours because the monsoon will flow. The storms don't move very quickly. So basically what you would carry any time of the year, I would just do more of it, more food, more water, and more dry layers to add on.
What about something like a weather radio? I know I have weather apps on my phone, but there's no signal when I go hiking up in the mountains or another place. Do you recommend weather radios, and do you have like a good brand that you like?
I use Midland radios, and I have several. I have like the desktop versions, like this big, that stay at home. I have the mobile radio, which is just weather bands only. So uh, sometimes you can get 2 or 3 channels of weather band here. Usually it's going to be one though, but it's got multiple options, so you can find those. Those are the little handheld ones. But then more recently, I've been carrying the Midland walkie-talkies, 2-way radios, and they have a weather band feature on there. And I use those just because, for me personally, it seems to have a bit more power to it, better reception power. So even in super remote areas, I can at least kind of hear a garbled weather service broadcast. But yeah, that would be a tremendous thing to carry. And you're not talking about a lot of weight either. In my experiences, they're lightweight. I just put them on the shoulder strap of my backpack. So they're lightweight. And the batteries in kind of the 2-way radios versus the standalone weather radios seem to last a bit longer too. So if you're out for a full day, and sometimes I get 2 or 3 full days of use on one charge. So I just keep it right here, and it's just a small portable little one. But weather radio does work, but you do run out of reception pretty quickly. And the same for cell phones. I mean, weather radio is sometimes worse than cell phone coverage in some cases. So having 2 as a backup, and then a lot of times you're just going to be out there without a resource, unless you have like a Garmin that has the satellite texting stuff. You're going to be out there without any reception for anything. So you gotta be very well prepared this time of the year for sure.
Well, and that leads in perfectly to the next series of questions I wanted to ask you about. That was going over how to prepare yourself, but I want to talk about when we actually get to the trailhead. We did the best job we could to prepare, and now it's time to get out and actually do the hike. So let's say we're on the trailhead, we've started our hike, and we look up into the sky and we see a cloud. Should we immediately panic? What clouds are the ones that we're worried about? What clouds are the one? Not all clouds are made the same. So what am I supposed to be looking for in the sky right there when I start my hikes?
First thing in the morning during the monsoon, you'll oftentimes get high clouds or even high or middle ones that just look like just big rows of puffy little clouds, just like somebody threw popcorn over the floor or something. And those are okay. That's going to be the pieces of the storms left over from yesterday. But if you're waking up and the sky is mostly cloudy and or you're already seeing the cumulus clouds that puff up with the dark bottoms and the white tops. If that's happening even in the early to mid morning, you need to watch out. That means the atmosphere is already energetic and also very filled with humidity. Kind of your best sense for Colorado is we don't really have humidity. You're from the East and the Midwest. You know what humidity is.
Yes.
For Colorado, our humid days are not humid days, but because we are a dry climate, we can sense, wow, today feels more humid, or we'll call it a humid day. When you walk up, you're having coffee in the morning and you sense a humid feel versus a dry morning, also watch out on those days. So maybe it's a clear start to the day, but like this morning, for example, this is being recorded on Thursday. But Thursday morning, I was having coffee on the patio, a cool, clear sky, but there felt like humidity, and we're starting to see kind of an uptick there. So a few options there. So visually and what your body is sensing are pretty good indicators for what that day will hold.
What about other signs of weather coming in? Again, we're out on the trail now. We've looked at the clouds, but a lot of times you're under a tree canopy. You're not really going to be able to see much of the sky. So like, are things like a rapid temperature change, wind speed change, are all of these storm related, or are there other factors that can go in? And when should you start, really worrying about it?
This time of the year, wind events will be largely tied to rainfall and thunderstorms. So yes, July, August, kind of mid-July through mid-August, that month window there. If you're sensing a wind, a lot of that time it's due to precipitation either forming, happening, or decaying. So yes, wind would be something to pay very close attention to. And the mountains, since you're mostly a mountain hiker guy, the direction is going to be highly variable because the mountains change that. However, if you were on the plains and you felt a wind hitting your face, you would look, is that a storm there? In the mountains, that doesn't necessarily work on the wind direction being an indicator, but the wind itself would be, because you'd know that there's a rain area somewhere and it's cooling things off to create this wind. So wind would be one thing. How the clouds grow would be another. And I think iPhones and Samsungs and things with those time lapse features are super handy. Even a 4-minute, 5-minute time lapse looking up can really show you quite quickly, just 5 minutes of your time, you're resting anyway, you have your power bar. Watch how quickly those clouds are growing, if at all. And you can also watch their direction of movement. The thing to watch out for would be, how aggressively are these clouds growing? And you can get that sense just by watching, but it's a little easier with a quick time lapse or something. And then building upon that, you're watching your clouds, you see that they are growing. What about their bottoms, the base? Are those bases getting darker in appearance, or are they staying kind of whitish? The darker they get, the more water that cloud is holding, and soon it will release that water as rainfall. So there's some visual indicators there. Now, let's take it all the way to the spectrum. You are surrounded by thunderstorms. Is that storm there moving at me? Time lapse can help, but also look at the anvil, the top of the thunderstorms. I'll try to crudely create my thunderstorm here. So here's your thunderstorm, and then sometimes you see the tops of them being peeled off like an anvil like this. That anvil, just like my fingers, are pointing the direction the storm is moving. So let's say I'm in the Indian Peaks and I'm looking kind of toward Rocky Mountain National Park, and I see a thunderstorm, and I'm watching that top, and I'm seeing how that top spreads and grows. If that top looks like it's going to go over my head, that storm is moving my way. If it looks like that storm is pointing east or away from me, that storm will miss me. So that's a good visual indicator there as you are seeing big time thunderstorms. And just be also in tune with the sound. Mountains will play with the sound of thunder. Um, but you can also listen. Use your ears. What are the animals reacting to? Are the birds starting to chirp a lot more and not fly? They're kind of nesting or roosting. Um, what's the sound of the distant trees? Are you hearing the leaves get really rough because then you know a stronger wind is coming your way? Those kind of things. But visual aspect, and I really like the quick time lapse on the phone. Doesn't use much battery, and 5 minutes is good.
That's a great idea. I hadn't thought of doing that. And I take plenty of breaks when I'm hiking. So it's a good opportunity to do that.
Yeah.
Um, you talked about, looking at the storm, seeing which direction they're going and the different, um, you know, sounds of the forest and things like that. Now, when I was growing up, we had this game where you'd hear or you'd see lightning, and then you would count one Mississippi, two Mississippi, and then when you heard the thunder, that was like, oh, it's 4 seconds away. That means it's 4 miles away. Is there any accuracy to any of that? Is there a good way for me to find out how far away the storm is? Because I have to move a lot quicker if it's 1 mile than if it's 10 miles.
Sure. Um, in all cases, the quicker you hear the thunder from the flash, the closer the lightning is. However, you get into Colorado in different humidity, different atmospheric layers. The mountains will reverberate the sound differently. I can't tell you 2 seconds means 1 mile or 5 seconds means 1 mile. But when you're in the mountains, it can vary based on the situation. Primarily, though, let's just say a rough estimate of 5 seconds. If you can count up to 5 seconds before you hear that thunder, again, in general terms, you're still relatively safe. Well over 5 to 10 seconds, 15, that lightning is way off there. But yeah, 5 seconds down to 1 or even less than 1. I've heard it like the second you see the strike, I've heard it. That is problematic. But again, it will vary depending on the mountain range because that will bounce the sound around and echo and things and screw with you. But there are some apps that you can pay a very low fee for if you have reception that will plot the lightning strikes on your phone for you with a radar picture. And obviously that's ideal, but we're kind of we have no reception kind of case here. But yeah, if things are 5 seconds or less, I'm highly concerned about lightning.
And at 5 to 10 seconds, you would say maybe it's time to start not going any higher and start coming down the hill instead of going up the hill, right?
For sure. And for me, I used to push it a little bit. Now I'm more cautious. If I see thunderheads going, I'm off. I'm leaving. I just don't want to get in that situation. But yeah, let's say 15 seconds, I'm alert. 10 seconds, I'm replanning, getting off of the hills or lower. And then 5 seconds and below, hopefully I'm a second away from my car or a structure.
Lightning, I mean, like you said, it's a serious thing. You could end up on a stretcher in a heartbeat. I want to talk a little bit about lightning because that is one of the more dangerous parts of storms in the mountains and while you're out hiking. I've seen people in videos where people's hair is standing up, people are laughing and joking and they think it's hilarious, but that's actually a really scary time, isn't it?
Very. There is, I can't pull it up now, but there is a kind of a classic picture out there of a woman standing at the Grand Canyon, I believe, and her hair's like this. And there's a thunderstorm in the distance. She later died. Lightning struck and killed her. And yes, static electricity is created by the movement of this water versus the dry air. So your thunderstorms are creating static, just like you're dragging your feet on a carpet. So static electricity clearly gravitates toward our hair and arm hair even. And if it's extending, that's, the atmosphere is largely electrified or ready to spark. So it is handy. And sometimes I'll look at my wife because her hair, even if we're just in town doing something, very thin hair. And if it starts to get a little staticky, we know that the atmosphere is getting ready to blast. So that is a very good indicator. And there are fancy sensors out there in the world that sense that static charge. But, for a home person, you're hiking, kind of that feel on your neck. For you and I, does our beard feel a little bit staticky? Maybe our arm hair, something like that. That's a good indicator that the atmosphere is charging itself, if you will, too. So yeah, that's a good point there. But lightning is one of the worst weather conditions we face in Colorado. And when you have the monsoon and that level of moisture, it can be very electric 24 hours a day, not just the afternoon like we classically think that timeline, any time of day.
So what do I do in a situation, my hair standing up, or I see somebody's hair standing up? Obviously you're going to try to get down off the mountain, but is that a situation where you're supposed to get on all fours? I've heard those stories, get on all fours and it'll help. Or what are other some of the lightning myths and that you want to dispel at this point?
Well, certainly if you are above tree line, get down as low as you can. Uh, and that would be crouched on your tippy toes. So you put as little of your body on the ground. So tippy toes, you're crouched down in a squat position. Try doing that for more than 30 seconds. It's tough, but that would be the safest. So, and then once you work down below tree line and below, you certainly have to worry about the height of the trees and everything. And you don't want to be in an open meadow. You really don't want to be within the trees either. So what are you supposed to do? Get down as low as you can in the terrain. Maybe you can find a creek bed or a valley or something. Try to get down as low as you can. If you do find yourself in a maybe torrential rainfall and you can't really see, you're worried about going, also crouch down in that meadow, somewhere away from the biggest trees. Give yourself some distance. You're crouched down in that tippy toe position in kind of a squat. Obviously, you'd rather be at the base camp, under a shelter, maybe at a Forest Service cabin if you're near one. That kind of thing. A suitable structure would be ideal, but we know we're oftentimes caught away from that.
I prefer like a Four Seasons at that point, sipping
Yeah,
hot cocoa.
yeah. Well, I'm a Ritz guy. I
I want to talk to you about the next, I think, most dangerous part of hiking, especially in the summer and the spring, and that's flash flooding. When I was out in Utah, I got a chance to hike through some slot canyons that were like 6 inches wide, and there's signs all over like, "Oh, watch out for rain." But if you're in a canyon situation, or you're in a slot canyon especially, but even like the canyons we've seen, Glenwood Canyon you referenced earlier, um, does the rain have to be coming down right where you're at? What are the risks involved in these flash floods that are common this time of year, unfortunately?
Well, first off, as you're planning a hike, know where the burn scars are. Burn scars will not retain any water. Every raindrop rushes down. So that's why burn scars are problematic for flash flooding. Consider a few weeks ago, the flash flooding that hit the Cameron Peak burn scar in Larimer County. Fort Collins is a long way from that burn scar, and they had residual flooding. They had a lot of debris flow going there along the Poudre all the way down the length of the Poudre. So debris flow is a problem. The rainfall is certainly a problem. So you can be miles and miles and miles away from the source of the water, those thunderstorms, and still be impacted by it. You can lower your threats by being in a highly treed, highly vegetated area, so away from burn scars. Cases of flash flooding, if you're in any canyon, you want to be on top of it, not in the middle of it, or certainly at the bottom. Glenwood Canyon with the mud flows, tremendously dangerous there. Had anyone been around the Hanging Lake parking area, or even the bike trail that goes along the river there, very, very dangerous in those situations, and for rock falls too. So you could be dozens of miles from the actual source of the rainfall and still at risk if you're in that low-lying kind of drainage area.
And flash flooding, there's not really warnings, like a thunderstorm, you can hear thunder, you can see the clouds building, but a flash flood is just that. It just appears basically, right?
Right. And sometimes this is no knock on weather service, but sometimes rainfall reports over a burn scar are delayed getting to the weather service. Maybe there's already flooding occurring before a warning is issued or before the local sheriff even knows, to warn people. So a lot of times with flooding, it's during the event before a warning or public notice can go out, and you would already be trapped. So yes, I mean, a lot of times for an official warning or official alert of some kind, it's already occurring before you receive that. And that's super problematic for flash floods. But a good bit of information for planning. Uh, the Weather Service, you can just Google weather.gov Boulder office. And a lot of times they'll include like a hazardous weather outlook or flash flood guidance for a day. Knowing that heavy rain is coming in, they can give some details on watch out for Larimer County near the burn scars. We'll have this kind of rainfall here. And they'll give some heads up there, but for the actual event and during flooding, you will not be warned. You will see it and hopefully not trapped by it.
Well, and we talked about this a little bit when with the thunder and the lightning about what to do when the weather happens. And you said get to, as low as you can in low places, get to a Ritz Carlton, 'cause that's how you are. But
Oh, I said Ritz crackers. I
oh,
can't. I can't afford a hotel.
I
I'm a
got you.
sole entrepreneur now.
I understand that. So what other anything else that you think that you should do? I know people like you, if you see a cave, that might be a good idea, but it might not be a good idea. Like what are some things that you should do outside of getting out of the weather? Like I guess my big one is where I hike, there's a ton of rocks everywhere, and I want to go tuck up next to a rock because I'm going to be protected by one side, but that can get me in trouble, can't it?
It can, but honestly, if you are in a thunderstorm in the Rocky Mountains, you are at risk one level or another. So for me, it's priority based risk assessment. Am I in a deluge? Am I safer in this cave, not knowing what lives in that cave? Or am I safer out here? Sometimes my risk assessment will say, I'm going to be safer in the cave. When it comes to lightning, am I going to be safer next to this group of trees or this group of trees because I'm surrounded by trees? I have no option. So you kind of risk assess. Uh, you're always going to be at risk of weather when you're in the weather, sadly, but you kind of have to prioritize, what's your risk assessment. For me, I have been trapped above tree line late at night, gets dark, lightning moves in. My only option was to settle in between some rocks. Not ideal, terrifying, but versus being down in the crater lake below me or trying to crawl through the dark through all this mud and rainfall to get to the trees, I thought I'd break a leg before I got to the trees. So bad place to hold up, but best of that situation.
Understood. Understood. Um, Hail's just terrible, is it not?
Yeah. Yeah.
There's nothing you can do.
You don't really see a lot of memes on social media saying, I love hail. Hail is my friend. I need more hail. No, we don't see that stuff.
I got caught once, and it was little like pea-sized hail, and it was the most painful hike I've been in because I mean, when it hits you in the ears and the neck and everything, like you feel every single piece of those little pellets. So
Yeah.
avoid hail. That's my meteorological advice.
I like it. That's your t-shirt. Do a t-shirt campaign with that man little trail in the back and then like I hate hail on the front or something.
Well, there's probably somebody out there that's like the Hail Preservation Society or something.
Oh, they might sue you. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's true.
that's true. Hey, so anything else that I forgot to ask you that you want to get out there and tell people? Anything I've missed in this conversation?
I just would reiterate that, out of the two wet seasons, quote unquote wet seasons, Colorado has the monsoon. is one where you can have powerful thunderstorms and flooding rainfall any hour of the day. We get into May and June, the first of the wet seasons, and it's more of thinking, well, make sure you hike early so you're off the hills by noon. That doesn't work in the monsoonal flow. You can have, I was on the Grand Mesa a few weeks ago, and it rained all night, all morning, all afternoon, and lightning too. So you can't use that. I'll be fine if I'm off by noon. That doesn't work in the monsoon. That's kind of the biggest thing. And then over prepare. I know it's a pain to pack a backpack, but when your socks are soaked, your boots are muddy, you're halfway down, you hit drier weather. I don't want to fight 28 blisters. It's worth it for me, the extra weight to put on the dry socks, the dry boots, and get out. Um, and, carrying a tarp too. That's one thing I didn't mention. It gave you some shelter, keep you drier, but just the extra food and water, because you might plan a picnic lunch at the car, thunderstorms pop up, you don't have your food, you don't have your water. It's good to have those things with you in case you're just kind of sheltered out waiting for the rain to pass. But monsoon season can be pretty problematic. A lot of lightning, and it's a lot of rainfall, obviously. And I think out of any season of the year or months of the year where hikers, especially if you're going a good distance, you really need to know the weather. Though that's the season you really have to know the weather, and as best as you can, and plan accordingly for it.
Absolutely. Well, that has all been really good stuff, Matt. I do appreciate it. That's the hardest thing for me, is trying to pick a day to hike when the weather's going to be good. And I talked about a blog last week about, with these reservation systems, I think people are going to be like, well, I have a ticket to get into Rocky Mountain. The weather's bad, but I'm going to go do it anyways because I've always wanted to go there. And I think people, that runs the risk of people getting in worse situations than they have been before. So this is all great information for people to take with them. So thank you.
That's a very good point. Yeah, the reservation system. I think my first thought when he said that was Hanging Lake. All the last, most of July, Glenwood Canyon was either closed or open, and usually closed. And you got reservations for Hanging Lake. I waited all year for mine. I'm going to be there waiting to open, and I'm going to risk it to go because I've been, want to get there. So that's a very good point that I hadn't thought of. Yeah. The reservation systems and weather should work, give you like a 24-hour rain delay or something.
Oh, absolutely. Because I know I've done the same thing where I had a ticket and I'm like, well, I'm going, no matter what.
Yeah.
Speaking of wonderful hikes in Colorado or anywhere in the country, usually on this point of my podcast, I talk about my favorite hikes. So since you're my guest today, I would like to pass that honor on to you, Mr. Makens. If you could pick a hike of the week for this week, anywhere in the world, what's your favorite hike?
Anywhere in the world, huh? Well, I'd have a different answer for anywhere in the world.
That you've done.
Okay, so we're at home. We're thinking about this weekend. Let's stay in Colorado. I do like Wyoming. I think Wyoming is beautiful, and New Mexico is too. But Colorado, if I were to pick just one thing and tell somebody they had to do it, head toward Buena Vista, and go take the Colorado Trail throughout the Collegiate Peaks. And you don't have to do the full length because clearly the Colorado Trail is a Colorado Trail, but hit Mount Princeton or Mount Harvard, do some segments there of the Colorado Trail. I think that area is really beautiful. You can look east, you can see some flat land, you see the valley there, the park. You get the real true Rocky Mountains above tree line, and you also have a lot of nice forests too. So in there, the Collegiate Peaks, Cottonwood Pass, those kind of areas, that's kind of my favorite. Because the Indian Peaks and like Brainerd, you get to see more wildlife like moose and stuff. But the views, to me, Collegiate Peaks somewhere in there would be spectacular. So I would pick a Colorado Trail segment through there.
I have to agree with you. I've been going up there recently myself, and I did Ptarmigan Lake and the Harvard Lakes hike. I haven't gone up to any of the peaks, but I've gone up to the lakes about halfway up, and it's just an absolutely beautiful area. I do have to ask you though, how do you pronounce it? Because I'm not a Colorado native, and I say Buena Vista, but that's not it, is it?
Buena Vista.
Buena Vista.
Okay. So say it the Colorado wrong Spanish pronunciation, like we do with so many things, like Salida and Lyman. Yeah. Um, I don't know if people still call it Buny. I know if you do, if you're from there, and some of us natives still call it. We go to Buena Vista.
Okay. All I know is when I say Buena, everybody looks at me a little weird when I'm up there.
Like,
So
what?
like,
You go back. You go back to your state, Mister. Yeah.
exactly. Exactly. Well, Matt, thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate it. I did want to give a shout out to media each week. And Matt brought it up earlier. 5280 Weather is a great website that you can check out. Matt, do you want to give a little plug for that as well?
Yeah, so we write weather5280.com. It's largely a Colorado and super focused on Front Range from Colorado Springs to Fort Collins. And it's kind of heads up weather, bigger events that may move through, a lot of snow forecasting. But this time of the year, it's just kind of like the heads up moments. You got to watch out for the monsoon. So we'll post once, 2, 3 times a week about maybe some monsoonal pushes and what that would mean across Colorado.
Great stuff there, Matt. I appreciate it again. That'll do it for this week's episode of Fat Man Little Trail, the podcast. Make sure you check out next week and follow me on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and all those fancy social medias, if you will. And we will talk to you next time. I hope to see you on a trail soon. Until then, happy hiking.